Are we live? Are we live on Good Thinking Live? Welcome, good thinkers from around the world. For those of you regular good thinkers to Good Thinking Live, you know the drill. Let us know who you are and where you're from. We are going to try to bring in as many of your comments as possible. We are streaming live from LinkedIn Live, where we are almost every morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time here in the United States, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time everywhere else, and also streaming live from YouTube Live. So both. So if you want to subscribe, you can to YouTube. You can just look up Becky Saltzman and subscribe and hit that bell notification to know when good shows are on every Monday, almost every Monday. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm excited to see all of you from all around the world who really want to give yourself the luxury of setting aside all the time we spend on what to think or being told what to think, or you need to think like this, to give ourselves a little bit of time each week devoted to improving or how to think or thinking about our thinking. Because thinking about our thinking is something that we're so busy, we rarely have time to do. So welcome here. I want to welcome some people onto the show, and I'm not going to get to everyone. We're going to try to figure out how to get to most people. I'm going to welcome. We have got people here from all over. I'm just going to bring you all onto the screen, as many as I can. And let us know where you're from, because one of the cool things about the show is Brazil, fantastic. We have, hello, everyone. Excited to be in the company of inquisitive and curious minds. Manpreet, inquisitive and curious minds, the best, my favorite kind. We've Missouri. Someone's, Leanne's from Missouri. WashU grad, WashU alum. Love Missouri. All right, so we've got LinkedIn Learning. Yes, we've got people from all over. We're going to just keep saying hi to everyone. And let's see who we have. And then we're going to get right into the show, because today's show, we are focusing on changing people's minds. How do you change people's minds? I'm going to take the banner off so we have room for your comments. Now you know. Put on where you're from and who you are. All right. So first question, we always like to start with a question. Can you think of a time when you had maybe a strong or medium opinion about a topic, and or maybe you made a decision and you begin to realize that the evidence is mounting against your position? Like, you made this decision or you have this opinion, and maybe you were sharing it, or maybe you just kept it to yourself, and you start to look at evidence because you're a good thinker. You're not just looking for confirming evidence. You're also looking for disconfirming evidence, right? Because as a good thinker, we know that we have to look for disconfirming evidence. So you start to look for this disconfirming evidence, and you start to realize that evidence is mounting against your decision or against something that you believe to be true. What are you feeling? And if you can just share one word about how you're feeling. And I want to frame this, and we'll get into this a little bit deeper, because by the end of this, I think you're going to have a different understanding of how and why we have this desire or need to change people's minds. And then how can we rethink this to be more effective at deciding when we even should do it? And then if we do decide to do it, how to do it. All right, so you have this thing and you have this nagging suspicion. I think I made a bad decision. Maybe you might justify it, or you rationalize, or you create a rationale for it. Maybe you try to ignore the evidence because no one likes to feel like they're wrong. All right, so maybe that's what you're starting to do. The resistance to changing our minds about positions or decisions can be intense. But if you understand this resistance yourself, like you, not just intellectually, but you feel it. Maybe you feel it in your shoulders or your stomach or your big toe. Where do you feel that uncomfortable feeling like, I think I might be wrong? That feeling is what you need to think about when you think about trying to change someone else's mind. So just set that aside. And we've got heat. Oh, it feels like a heat wave on my back. Oh, on your back. That's interesting, that heat wave. See, I think I feel it like in my lower abdomen. And, I'm glad you said the heat wave on your back, because it feels like a learning opportunity. Okay, that's intellectualizing. It feels like a learning opportunity that Ryan says is intellectualizing. And that's great. But what does it feel in your body? Do you feel like a learning opportunity? When you feel a learning opportunity, do you feel it in your big toe? Where do you feel a learning opportunity? So, Stephanie says, I feel it in my gut. It's in my gut. What part of your gut? Your lower gut, your upper gut. And here's the deal. If you learned that someone you believed in, someone you trusted, was stealing from you, like your best friend or your business partner or someone that you really trusted was stealing from you, instead of thinking, wow, I would be mad, where would you feel that feeling? That's what I'm talking about, because get that feeling in your mind, and that will help you know what the other person is feeling when you're trying to change their mind. So we've got my heart, my shoulders. Okay, my shoulders. I think shoulders is really a good one too. I feel a lot of things. That's a really good point. In my chest. April says my upper gut. Okay, she says upper gut. All right, upper gut. And I wonder if the feeling of guilt is different than the feeling of jealousy. I know that's weird. I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with changing people's minds? But the difference between effectively understanding how to change people's minds is moving from the intellectual, which we're going to get to, into the physical manifestation of that feeling. In my gut, in my middle, it's hollow in my gut. Good. For those of you who are moving from intellectual to physical, you're going to start to understand how you can take these intellectual ways of changing people's mind or persuasion and actually taking the idea to the next level, and even questioning whether it's worth it to try to change their minds and when it's worth it. Empathy is key. Yeah. Intellectual or emotional empathy. I feel curious. Okay, what does it mean to feel curious? Is it like, do you feel curious in the back of your neck? Do you feel curious in your fingers? All right. Where do you feel curious? I love curiosity, so I'm curious. Where do you feel curious? Welcome everyone here who's coming on. And also, Barclay says the middle of the stomach, the middle of the stomach. Interesting. All right. So for all of you who have said either intellectually or physically, and Bethany missed the question. When you think of this feeling that, I think that this position I held or this decision I made may be wrong, where do you feel it? And how is that different than feeling like you believed in someone and now they've cheated you? It's a similar feeling, because what you're doing is you're starting to change a belief. That feeling of being blindsided by someone who you trusted, that took advantage of that trust. And now you realize, I was wrong to trust them. That's a similar feeling to when you have to change a belief or change something you strongly believe in. And understanding that is the key to understanding how to change people's minds about things that are different than like, should I buy this or should I buy that? All right. So where do you feel that feeling? All right. So that's the question. Your heart beats faster. Your heart, I can feel it. You can feel it in your chest. That's a really good point. I feel it in my face. I think I do too, April. I think I do feel it in my face. All right. But let's get to when you really want to intellectually change people's minds and what are some of the things that you can do. And that really has a lot of, that really sits in the persuasion camp. And a lot of that has been best described by Dr. Bob Cialdini as the principles of persuasion, the principles of persuasion. So we'll get into the principles of persuasion and there's, by the way, there's some really great LinkedIn learning courses for those of you who's on LinkedIn Learning. A couple things about LinkedIn Learning. There's some great LinkedIn Learning courses that really focus on the principles of persuasion, but we'll go over them really quickly. But you can look up Brian Ahern's course. I think a couple of other people, but Brian Ahern's really good he's one of the Bob Cialdini authorized trainers in the principles of persuasion. So I really recommend you look up his courses. Also, today's Good Thinking is to celebrate the launch of a new LinkedIn Learning course called Critical Thinking for More Effective Communication. You can see that on the cover of the LinkedIn Learning site today. So definitely, if you're interested in learning how to communicate with logic and how to balance all of that with actual scripts that you can use and modify, check out Critical Thinking for More Effective Communication. All right. So Bob Cialdini, we're going to say, We're going to say, yes, lifelong, Ryan, lifelong LinkedIn learning. I love it. I love LinkedIn learning as both an instructor, but also as a consumer. I love it, love it, love it. All right, principles of persuasion. Let's go over the principles of persuasion really quickly, because you can start to separate the intellectual pursuit of changing someone's minds and the intellectual pursuit of having your mind change so that you cannot be manipulated, right? And also how that differs from that physical feeling. I'm not going to call it an emotional feeling. I'm going to call it a physical feeling, because sometimes we keep our physical feelings at bay. We don't explore them when we keep it up in our head. And that's a great way to protect yourself, but it also prevents you from seeing the effects of your attempts to change someone's mind when it comes to something that they strongly believe, like a moral belief or something like that. So we'll get into that. But we're going to do the principles of persuasion. So let's just go over them really quickly. Scarcity. You know when someone says, hey, if you want to take advantage of this, it's going to be for a limited time, or there's only a limited number. So we know that scarcity can get us to change our minds. We're really these are more for buying decisions, because I don't think scarcity would get me to change my mind about a strongly held belief. Can you share these courses on LinkedIn Learning? You can go to LinkedIn Learning platform if you are a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, you can get a 30-day free subscription. Let's see, what do we have here? Yes. Worth the money. LinkedIn Learning. Oh, here it is. Thank you. Barkley posted the link to critical thinking for more effective communication. Anyway, so we've got scarcity. So I want to say about scarcity, if you go on to critical thinking, more effective communication, for example, today, you can, for a limited amount of time, access the course for free. You're like, oh, I want to get it for a limited time. It's true. That's a true thing. But it also will invoke your sense of, I'm telling you, you're being manipulated by scarcity, but it's a true thing because it's whatever. Also, next thing, reciprocity. Reciprocity is another one of the principles of persuasion. Sometimes I do something for you, and then you feel obligated to do it for me. So like when you're on the street and someone's trying to hand you a flower or trying to give you something, sometimes you go, oh, I don't want that, because you know you're going to feel obligated to buy whatever it is they're selling. Or you're at a food, you're at a bunch of maybe food carts, and someone tries to hand you a sample of something to eat. I'm handing you a rubber chicken. And then you might feel like, oh, I don't want to take that because I'll feel obligated to buy from that food cart. So you might say, oh, I'll come back here. You make up all these excuses, even though you have no intention of coming back. So that is the feeling of reciprocity, and it's human. So, people sometimes manipulate it, but also sometimes people do nice things for you, and you feel like you want to do nice things for other people. So these principles don't always have to have this maniacal. They can be ethical. They can be ethical and beautiful. The next one is liking. So when it is easier to find things to like about someone else than to get them to than to convince them to like you. So if you want to convince or persuade someone, and this is a really important one, you want to find reasons to like them. And one of the places that you can look is to find uncommon commonality. Uncommon commonality. Here's the question. How do you find ways to like people? How do you find ways to like people? Do you find ways to like people that think exactly like you? And if that's the truth, how do you find ways to convince people of things that you feel like you need to convince them? Why do you even want to change people's minds if all you do is surround yourself with people who are like you? How do you use the principle of persuasion of liking? That's a question. All right. So Ryan says, April, Body Career Success Coach. I use it mostly for the free courses, actually, but there are some great learning paths available to everyone this year in light of the pandemic. Yes, absolutely. Ryan, cheers to LinkedIn Learning. All right, so we've got scarcity, reciprocity, liking. Another one is authority. So when you highlight authority, and one of the ways that you can get people to try to change their minds is to provide evidence from someone with authority. And there you have to be careful about, in the critical thinking realm, whether you're sharing information from someone who has authority or is an authority. And that's very difficult because titles can be deceiving. Like if you're a doctor and you're an ophthalmologist, but you're a doctor and you say, well, as a doctor, I can tell you that this virus is blah, 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 and you're speaking from like maybe a virologist point of view, then you might be someone who is perceived to have authority, but you might not be an authority, for example, on, the genetic structure of this virus, for example. But people go, oh, but you're a doctor. So this is a little bit difficult too. All right, so find common ground. We've got find common ground to go off the vibes. If they're a good human being, I'm in. How do you know if someone's a good human being? Is it because they agree with you or because they easily are converted to your way of thinking? Is it easy to get them to change their minds? Ways to like people. All right, let's see. What do we got for ways to like people? I'm not bringing all of your comments in. I wish I could, but I'm going to try. Take advantage of common ground or find the common ground where none is immediately apparent. There's always something common between two people or groups of people. Rubber chickens. I completely agree with Ryan, because if you cannot find things to agree or find some kind of common ground, you're not looking hard enough. And also, if people can't find it with you, you're not making it easy enough for them. Hint. Hint, hint, hint. The next one is social proof. So we've got scarcity, reciprocity, liking, authority, social proof. Everyone's doing it. More people are doing it. So social proof is another way to get people to change their minds. Like, everyone that is like you is thinking this way. Why are you still thinking this way? All right. Now, I'm not telling you the best words to use. These are just the principles of persuasion. And we're not going to spend the most amount of time on this because there's a secret thing that we're going to all explore and uncover. All right. What other ways? Let's see what other new comments before I go to the next one. Okay. So Bethany says, figuring out common ground is helpful to changing minds, both mine and other people. Yeah, I think it's crucial, actually. And I also think that the best way to do that is to move from the intellectual, like, oh, we both are this, and into that kind of bodily feeling of where we might have the same feeling or reaction to something. Ask questions to get them to share their interests and passions. Absolutely, Brenda. I mean, if you don't start with curiosity, you can't uncover anything about the person. So if you just go into, whether it's a negotiation, into persuasion mode, you just go into scarcity and reciprocity and liking and authority and social proof. Without curiosity, you're not going to uncover what you need to know to be able to change someone's mind. So I think that's totally true. I would say that the first thing to start with is a genuine curiosity. But the problem is, are you really starting with a genuine curiosity if you start with deciding you need to change someone's mind? And maybe a better question is, why do I have to change their mind? What is driving this desire? Why do people have to think like me? Now, maybe if it's your partner or your best friend, you just don't want to have this big chasm between, like, you don't want these differences of opinion or differences of belief. And it's just exhausting to believe differently, or you feel so passionately about something that you don't want to hang around people who don't share that passion. That's a one thing. But why on social media do you have to get people to believe what you believe? Why? I mean, not why, but like, why out of curiosity? Exploring the answer to that question is true curiosity. So if you do start with curiosity and say, why is it important that people believe what I believe? I feel so strongly about this issue and that issue. Why is it so important that other people agree with me? Not why, don't just default. Really asking out of curiosity. That is really starting with curiosity, showing empathetic understanding. Yeah, you have to be curious. You really have to be curious. And if you start with empathetic understanding and not intellectual empathy, you might miss it, because you might think, well, I would want to do this. Why wouldn't everyone want to do this? All right. So that is that starting with curiosity really is different than, why are they not thinking like me? The first question is, why is it important that they are? Like, why is it so important that I have to post on LinkedIn that you should think like this, that you need to do this, and you need to recognize this? Why is that so important? Maybe it's important to my best friend or the people I work with, but why random strangers on LinkedIn or Facebook? Or why is that? Maybe there's a good reason. But if you can't answer it, you don't have the condition in place to understand how you're going to effectively change someone's mind. You got to know what your motivation is, your true motivation. Big question, Brenda says, why do I feel the need to change someone's mind? Why? Can we choose to expand their thoughts without the outcome to change their thoughts? Let the change evolve. Do we even need to focus on changing people's thoughts? What is the reason for that? Well, sometimes we might see bad ideas out in the world. But we say, well, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Well, no, not all ideas have equal value. I'm going to let you in on a secret. Not all ideas have equal value. You know, the idea that the sun went around the earth was not as valuable as the idea that the earth goes around the sun. Like, these are some values that really have some scientific backing. So if you are a fan of critical thinking, your goal is to continue to get closer to the truth, never landing on it, but continue to progress to get closer to the truth. Why is it important to bring people along on that journey? And are you bringing them along on that journey if you're necessarily convincing them to believe what you believe? That's the other question. All right. So I think it's important to be at peace with your thoughts and at the same time be confident to express yourself without fear, Manpreet says. Okay. Yeah. Why is it important to be at peace with your thoughts? I know that seems like an obvious question, but why is it important to be? Maybe it is. It is not important that they are thinking like me, James says. It's more important that they question me. And that's what helps me ask myself what I might be missing. Okay, so James is someone who definitely values critical thinking. We've got all these good critical thinkers here. Let's get to the last two principles of persuasion. Again, scarcity, reciprocity, liking authority, social proof. The other thing is consistency. And I think this is a really good one. We have this desire, I don't know why, to not be a flip-flopper. Well, I thought you said you believe this. And then well, I did, but blah, 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 blah. Like, we need to defend what we believed yesterday. Why do we need to defend what we believed yesterday if the evidence is mounting that our belief was a little bit based on the information that we had? I mean, we are progressing. We are constantly learning more. What is causing us to cling so desperately to these beliefs? Okay, any of you rock climbers? Any of you rock climbers? So Brenda says, let's see if any of you are rock climbers. Brenda says, I don't like the word opinion. I find it antagonistic as people can be married to them. I use the phrase, my thoughts are. I like that. I like that a lot, Brenda. I'm liking all these comments. Good thinkers. So are any of you rock climbers, or have any of you been in a situation, maybe you watched a movie? So I'm afraid of heights. So I took this indoor rock climbing course to kind of like get over myself. And, you're clinging to all of these rocks, these, things on the wall. All right. So you're clinging to all these little things on the wall. Now I had a belay on, so I knew if I couldn't hold on any longer, I would just swing from the rope and it would be fine. So I had that belay. I had that safety net, and, I was just inside a gym, so I wasn't that high up in the air. And I would remember clinging and clinging and clinging to the rocks or the little boulder things. And then that feeling where your fingers kind of get tired and you're like, oh, I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. I got to cling harder. That feeling of the fear of falling is very similar to when you have a belief that you're holding really strong, and then all of a sudden the evidence is starting to chip away at that belief. So we've got some rock climbing. I have a hard enough time walking around the pavers on my patio, Ryan. You have no idea. I completely agree. Bouldering is fun. Bouldering is hard. But you start getting a little high up, you're like, oh, what if I fall? When you think of your beliefs and when you hold them really, really strongly, it's easy to see how yours are precious because yours are right. And then when things start chipping away, when your fingers start getting tired and you fall, you think, I'm going to free fall. But most of our beliefs, if we did free fall, would be held with a belay. Most of our beliefs, if we held them up to scrutiny and they deserve to be reconsidered, wouldn't kill us to change our minds. And yet we cling so much to the consistency. We know this for ourselves, but for some reason we think all we have to do is provide evidence to someone who doesn't think like we do, and they'll change their minds. Well, we don't. So the secret to how to change people's minds, obviously the scarcity, reciprocity, liking, authority, social proof, consistency, is really how we allow our minds to be changed. And so the first thing necessary to change someone else's mind is to embrace the ability to change your own. All right. So these are great principles. These principles of persuasion are great for sales or even certain stages of a negotiation. But here's the question. Do any of these principles help or actually make someone change their mind about a strongly held belief? Do any of these principles really work? I mean, maybe it makes you buy this or that product, or maybe it makes you do this behavior or that behavior. But just because someone says, okay, you've worn me down, I'm going to do this, or okay, I'm going to do this behavior, how do you know if they've really changed their mind? And is it that important that they have? All right. So that we've got some rock climbing, we've got some rock climbers. This is only up. We've said the counterintuitive action, gripping harder, makes your strength. Yes. Basically, gripping harder is not a good recipe. Maybe gripping differently or looking for new things to cling on to. I'm not that good. I mean, I've only done it a few times, and but if any of you rock climbers have any, I really recommend the movie Free Solo if you want to make your palms sweat. And surprisingly, a lot of the feeling I had watching Free Solo was a lot of the feeling I think inside that was very similar to when I'm feeling that some of my decisions might be wrong. It's a weird thing that same palm sweating feeling that you get when either watching or looking, or if you're afraid of heights, is very similar to that palm sweating feeling where you think, I think I've been thinking about this wrong, or I've made a bad decision. And the stronger the belief, the more the feeling is similar to that kind of palm sweating feeling, which is weird. It's weird. So the resistance to changing our minds is physical, not just intellectual. All right. Do any of them truly change their minds, or are they just trying to appease me to shut up? Totally. Now, here's the question. Let's say that you were in an argument with someone and you knew that by the end of the conversation, you had provided enough evidence that the person said, you're right. And unbeknownst to you, so they walk away and you feel great, you changed their mind. But unbeknownst to you, they go with their friend behind your back and say, Becky thought that I changed my mind. I just shut her up. But I didn't, you didn't know that they were saying that behind your back. So you're like, yes, I changed their mind. How would you feel if you didn't know that they hadn't changed their mind, but you thought that they had? Well, you'd feel the same as if you had changed their mind, because you wouldn't know. So when you are thinking about changing someone's mind, it's really important to know why you feel you need to do that, because they could trick you and you wouldn't know it. And you'd feel this false satisfaction that now I made a difference. Now, you might post on social media that you need to change someone's mind about this or that. And you might have a lot of people that like it because their minds were already like-minded. But how do you know if you're really changing people's minds, or are you just preaching to the choir, trying to get more followers, trying to gather more people who are like you to feel more comfortable? All right. So let's say that you and I, even if we're able to change our minds privately to ourselves, how do we communicate that change publicly? How do we remain consistent? And the only way to really do that is to think, when was the last time you changed your mind? Maybe you made a decision to buy some product and now you decide to buy another product or something like that. But I'm talking about really get in your mind, when was the last time you changed your mind about a true belief? It's hard. It's not that easy to come up with a time. Well, that should indicate to you how hard it is to effectively change someone else's mind about true beliefs or moral positions. You can get them to buy things. You can persuade them to do things. Those are kind of intellectual, maybe even implicit, the things that you don't have access to consciously. But really, when you want to think about when the last time you really changed your mind or upgraded your thinking in a way that shook your foundation, it's really hard to identify those times. And so if you are going to set out to try to change someone's mind, it better be for a good reason, because it's going to be hard. It's going to take you feeling what would effectively help you change your mind. And if you cannot access, okay, so Brenda says this week, that's amazing. Ray says, how to change the negative mind of a person who are desperately loving someone who can't have a romantic relationship with whom. Okay, so good question. Ray, why do you have to bother? Why do you need to take it upon yourself to change their mind? Maybe you're trying to save them from an unhappy situation or a learning situation, or maybe a physically violent situation at worst. But be really clear on why you feel the need to try to change their mind. And is it worth it? Because it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard. And if you can't access how someone else helped you or made you, help or made, effectively change your mind, you probably don't have the tools yet to figure out how to change someone else's mind. If your beliefs are so tightly held that you will not let anyone in to try to help change it or update them, then you need to access that before you go about trying to effectively change someone else's mind. That's really it. The key to knowing how to change someone else's mind, the secret rather to knowing how to change someone else's mind, lies within you. How does someone else help you change your mind? And one of the conditions for critical thinking, one of the conditions for those good thinkers who want to live a life where you're constantly moving closer to the truth, never landing on it, too much uncertainty, but moving closer to the truth, that constant movement and progression, the key is to figure out how you can change your own mind. Because unless you can do that, you don't have the tools in place for changing someone else. You have the tools in place for placating someone or getting them to say that they changed their mind or getting them to behave in a performative way that makes you think, I've done it. But what they'll say behind your back or what they'll say in their heart of hearts may indicate that you weren't as effective at changing their minds as you think. So I just think it's better to think about the difference between changing your minds and updating your thinking. Changing your minds and updating your thinking. And I had like 12 points of things where you can, like, things that you can do to change your mind. Now, if you want to do a part 2, where I get into those things using caveats or whatever, or you go to LinkedIn Learning and you get your free course, or if you're a member, get the course, Critical Thinking for More Effective Communication. And then you have questions about that in regard, let me know, and we'll do another good thinking, because I have to keep it at 30 minutes because people are busy. Anyway, thank you so much for participating. I cannot tell you, and I'm going to try to get to all the comments afterwards. I want to bring in more and more of your comments. Thank you, good thinkers from all over the world, and I hope you have a great week.